You can go ahead, John.
Okay, thank you, Sabine, and it's great to be with you today and to see some of your smiling faces and some new faces and some faces I haven't seen for years. It's really great, Esther, being one of them there. I'm from Ruth and Naomi's Mission. I'm the Director of Clinical Services there, and here just to talk primarily for the next number of minutes about some of our housing initiatives and some of the corollary between what we do, how it reflects into the housing spectrum of services across the community. So as most of you know, we have a couple of shelters. They're both located at the same site on Margaret Avenue. They're called the Revive Shelter as well as the Pathway Shelter. The Revive Shelter is a 24-hour shelter that's open. People have their beds and they can hold them, come and go. We also provide meals and supportive services for them. Our Pathways Shelter is an overnight shelter, operating more as an emergency shelter. And so both of those shelters, and as I look out my window right now, probably will have a few more people staying in them over the next number of days as the rain, at least for today, continues to make its way down. And so we can house probably about 60 people. But one of the things that we will never do is turn anybody away if they have no place to lay their head. And so we will always find a way to make sure that that happens. Another element to our housing initiatives, and although it has another point of connectivity, is our residential recovery services called Oasis. And we have an Oasis residential treatment program for women that houses 8 women. We are currently at about 90% full there right now, and that fluctuates throughout time. And that's located on Princess Avenue in what is called the Family Center, which is our newer building over the last number of years. We also have a men's treatment program, residential treatment program. We can house up to 18 men. And that is located at what is formerly known as the Travelodge Hotel at the intersections of Highway 1 and Yale and Old Yale. And so that whole site has been renamed the Interchange. And I'll come and talk about that a little bit more fully in a moment. So both of our men's and women's residential program, an individual can stay upwards of 3 years or thereabouts. It's not time limited, but we have a number of different phases that they make their way through. The first is the reflection phase, which is generally the first 30 days of their stay with us, which is more of a social detoxing and just kind of getting their bearings straight. And then the second phase is called our readjustment phase. That phase lasts anywhere from 3 to 4 months, and that's about getting some of the wires in the brain realigned so that things actually begin to make sense. Then we enter into kind of the core of our recovery, which is our third phase, which is our recovery phase, which can last upwards of 18 to 24 months. And then lastly, we have our reintegration phase, where those who complete our program and are reintegrated back into the community continue to have monthly supports that are made available to them, so that we're making sure that their needs are met even as they leave from us. We have our family center site on Princess Avenue, which is right behind our shelters. And we have a 36-unit family complex there. We can house up to 36 families. It was full before we actually opened, and has remained that way through the last couple of years. The only prerequisite for an individual coming into residency is that they have to have a dependent living with them, generally a child, but we also have some adults who are living with adult dependents as well. And inside of the family center, we have wraparound supports available. We kind of call this, instead of our Housing First project, we call it a Housing Plus project. And so we have medical services that are in our facility through our New Hope Health and Wellness Clinic. And we have access to counseling, social workers, chiropractic, doctors support, and we're hoping into the new year to finally get our dentistry up and running, but that's still just a little bit of ways away yet. So this is probably one of the safest buildings in the community for people to be living in. We have 24-hour on-site security, as well as all of the latest, and I won't say greatest, but certainly the latest technologies available for safety and security within our facility. And a lot of the women, especially, who are coming out of violence or coming out of domestic issues, just feel a huge amount of relief when they can be here, knowing that they and their children are safely protected within the cocoon of our facility here. And then we have the interchange, or the program over at the interchange called the Bridge. And so that the entirety of that is a project in partnership with BC Housing. And BC Housing is actually the owner, and we are the operator. And so we have our men's residential recovery program in there, as well as right now we have 20 people who are living in the facility. We have room for about 60 or 58 actually, but we're waiting for renovations, and we're waiting for other permitting issues to fall into place yet with the city to make that a kind of a full go operation. So right now it is operating as a hybrid shelter for those who aren't overtly chemically dependent in our community, who are at least able to self-manage in appropriate ways. And so these are people who have often and are coming out of our other shelters from downtown, and people who have a little bit more stability or capacity for stability in their life. And that will all be changed over into a supportive housing model once we're able to get the refurbishments done. And so then application for housing into that would be through BC Housing and through their website. We have 2 social workers who are working on staff there currently to monitor and work with our clients, and to make sure that, again, they're safe and secure and supported to the best degree possible. And then lastly, we're in just kind of general level discussions right now with BC Housing in terms of looking at some opportunity for senior housing in the community. And so there's really nothing to report on that other than conversations are in process with that. And we're hoping within a couple of years that we actually might be able to have a significant stabilized, being a part of a continuum of stabilized housing for seniors within our community, and that it would just be another part of the branches of housing in the community. So that is, to some degree, in a very general and quick overview of some of the housing initiatives that we have here at Ruth and Naomi's. And we've been pleased to be a part of this community since 2000. And as we kind of enter into the next chapter of our life, we're not sure what that all looks like. Some of you may have seen or heard that our executive director has retired, and so our board is now in working through the process of engagement to bring a new executive director in. We currently have an interim executive director. His name is Neil Osland, and so he has assumed the helm of the ship for now. And so we carry on and are excited to be a part of what is transpiring as as a member of this community. So there may be some questions that I'm certainly willing to field if there are any, and if that's appropriate, Sabine, I can do that.
Please just either physically raise your hand or use a digital hand, or just speak up if you have any questions for John at this time.
Hi, Leslie.
Good morning. And
Good morning.
My question to you is, you have so many amazing services and opportunities for community members now. If I have somebody looking for something in one of these areas, do you have an outreach worker they could connect with, or to sort of field all the services to see which one they might fit and if they could apply and all that?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. So we have at our site on Princess Avenue, we have a mission service navigator, and her name is Pamela. And so you can get a hold of her for this site. And then we have at the interchange site, we have Jennifer and Sylvia, who are our navigators at that site. So any one of our sites would be able to get people, and we, within Ruth and Naomi's, we have an every door is the right door approach to that as well.
Is there a central number for these folks?
Yes, there is. The number, I can give that to you, is 604-795-2322.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I just have a quick question.
Yes.
With so much new stuff and so many changes with Naomi's, I mean, I want, like, is it all on your website? If someone wanted to get like an overview, like the names of things and the kinds of programs, I know that one could call that telephone number or probably any number of the reception numbers and get the lowdown. But if one wanted to just familiarize oneself with, like, right now what's going on, is the website, or is there an info sheet, or is there something?
So the website is available. We were just in our lead team meeting yesterday realizing it needs a lot of work right now.
I imagine, yeah.
And but you can go to www.randmission.ca and get what information is there, and there should be enough directive information with some of these services, but that is one of our weaker links right now, for sure.
Okay.
Jennifer.
I've had a couple of individuals. I'm from Chilliwack Society for Community Living, and we've had a few situations where we were unable to find any shelter beds at night for a couple of our individuals. One was because there was no female beds, but we've also run into problems with any kind of medical support needed and shelters being available. So we've actually had to go to Abbotsford Hope, and still, like, we literally have had, it's been really awful. And I don't know if any of the shelters you've mentioned would be a better match, or if there's somewhere else you should be seeking for somebody who has a bit of medical concerns as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I guess at the end of the day, there is somewhat of a limit in terms of capacity for us. So because of our pathway shelter, which is an emergency-based shelter, we will generally find bed space or floor space for an individual. Now, that's certainly not ideal, but and particularly as the weather now begins to change, and if it gets colder, we also operate partially as an extreme weather shelter as well. And so we're in conversations with BC Housing right now about what that might look like and how we might be able to access some of the space currently at the interchange for that. But that's still in discussion for us. So unfortunately, Jennifer, there are limitations across the face of the community with the Salvation Army and Wilma's Transition House and Ann Davis and all of those, which aren't technical, well, they are shelter to some degree, but when they're full, they're full. And so we do see some of the spillover here.
I guess I was also wondering, are any of those, are there any shelters that are able to support somebody with gender identity concerns? So we've had some issues with this particular person. Just some shelters won't accept males, some won't accept females, but sometimes this person could identify as but both, and that's been a real concern. And I wondered if there were shelters that are open to that.
And our shelter is, for sure.
Okay, that's good to know.
Person. Yep.
Thank you.
Chilliwack RCMP.
Yeah.
Morning, it's Krista Burlick here, and actually I've got Brad Rendell with me as well. He's just a little bit out of the screen, but just obviously you guys have had a busy year transitioning away from the portal location to interchange. What's the bed space difference between the portal and interchange?
Okay, so let me try to clarify a misunderstanding that is pretty common in our community. Most people think that when the portal shut down that the clients went to the interchange, and that's not what happened. The clients that were at the portal, that was what was called the portal. We renamed that now Revive and Pathways, and that is on our Margaret Street address. And so we gave up our facility that was our men's recovery on Margaret, and we moved them to the interchange so that the shelter could be opened at the Margaret Street site. So even though there are some sheltered people at the interchange, it is designed as a supportive housing initiative. So, sorry, I missed the beginning of your question again. I just lost it.
Just in terms of the numbers of bed space,
Oh, the
was
number
that
of beds.
affected?
Yep.
Yeah.
The number of beds, it hasn't changed. It's about the same as it was before. So it was 45 for what was then the portal, and it's about that now for Revive. And we have about 30 beds available, 25 to 30, 26 technically on contract, but as I said, we can house more if necessary. So the numbers haven't particularly changed.
Okay, perfect. Thanks for clarifying that, by the way. And our second question is just, obviously, sometimes we encounter individuals who have been banned from certain shelters, which poses a challenge. So any advice on what we can tell these people who, you know, aren't able to access a specific shelter in our community because of behavior related issues? Like, what are the options available to them?
Ooh, there isn't. We know they burn. We often have we're in constant communication with the other shelters because some of the behaviors, if they're of an extreme nature, of a potentially violent nature, we don't want to be incurring that and setting up another shelter for the same problem to occur. So we try to respect that. But we do have people that are banned at one site that are okay at the other. And there are certain people that just using Salvation Army as a point of reference, some will say we love the Salvation Army but we hate Ruth and Naomi's, or we love Ruth and Naomi's and we hate Salvation Army. We don't like their structures either way. So there will be some that just based on their own personal preference won't want to come. But if a person is banned, generally will have seen the same behaviors. So if someone is banned at Salvation Army, chances are they've been banned or will potentially be banned with us as well if their behavior doesn't change. So unfortunately, the options are fairly limited for that, which is a stress point.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, I'm not seeing any more hands.
Sorry, can I ask a question?
Yep.
My name's Sarah Benet. I'm a parole officer in Chilliwack. And the question I have is, routinely encounter fellows that are finishing their sentence and require housing. And I'm just wondering if the supportive housing that you were talking about at Interchange, if somebody was had a criminal record with a history of sexual offenses, would they be exempt from being able to live there or stay there temporarily?
Probably not. That would be, so what would happen? A person would, once the supportive housing network is actually framed there, the application is through BC Housing. BC Housing then talks to us and to our team saying, here's a person who's applied. We think they could be eligible. So would you carry on the interview process with them? So they, because it is primarily a single occupancy residence, there's no children on that site at all. So, which would be certainly something problematic for a sexual offender if there were. So they could be considered, again, depending on whatever conditions may be put on them by the courts around that. But there wouldn't necessarily be that wouldn't preclude them from applying.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
We're doing here. We can move on to our next presentation, which is from Cyrus Center, Chilliwack. Trevor, would you like to go ahead and pop your presentation up? That'd be great.
Yes, I'm gonna share a screen. I have two monitors, so I'm not sure which monitor I'll share. Oh, probably this one. Let's share that. Can you guys see that okay?
Yep.
Cool. So yes, nice to see you all this morning. I'm Trevor, the director of Cyrus Center in Chilliwack, and so have the opportunity to look over our Cyrus Center drop-in center and emergency shelter on Wellington, which we have the capacity to house up to 20 individuals, both youth under 19 and young adults from 19 to 24. And we've been open in Chilliwack since 2014, I believe, but have been around as an organization since 2004, starting in Abbotsford. So at our drop-in center and shelter, our goal for all our clients who coming from different backgrounds, being youth, often family challenges for whatever reason, they aren't able to be at home or home is unsafe, or they've been living outside for quite a while. So our goal with those individuals is ideally to restore them back to their home, to build into those relationships and mediate when we can, but also find alternative stable housing when we can also. So in our drop-in center, we have access to some meals, lunch and dinner every day, breakfast during weekdays, and access to shower and laundry, and just the social relational support from staff and volunteers for those who just want that connection and that place to just be and let their guard down and sit, and if they're street entrenched, to be inside and have that comfort. So I want to talk a bit about our newest program, though, called the Switchback, which we opened last December on Mallard Avenue. So the Switchback is low barrier supportive housing for youth aged 16 to 24 years old. The goal for Cyrus Center as an organization is that youth would have stable, safe housing. And we found it very challenging to find stable and safe housing for youth and young adults when home is not an option, especially when there's this history of homelessness. And they're often affected by substance use and mental health challenges. So we wanted to design something where we could provide support and meet some of those needs, which is why it's designed as low barrier. We believe that it's really tough to address substance use challenges and mental health challenges when there's a history of homelessness. So residents coming in are often coming in with a lot of different challenges. So within this building, we have 16 units, both 2-bedroom and 1-bedroom. One of the 2-bedroom units is actually our staff office, where we have two 24/7 staff who are there at all times. So that means there's 8 1-bedroom units, and 7 2-bedroom units that are available for rent for the individuals that we support. This is it's a partnership with BC Housing. So BC Housing owns the building and Cyrus Center operates it. It's called the Switchback because the Switchback refers to the 180-degree turns that lead up to a mountain. Either if you're hiking or driving, it just makes getting up and over a mountain a lot easier, even though it doesn't seem like it's the most direct path. It eventually leads you to that top to overcome that challenge in that mountain. So again, we talked about at our emergency shelter, we saw a number of youth who just have been, their families or themselves have been homeless for a long time. They've got that history of homelessness. We'd see the same clients coming in and to our emergency shelter for a few days and then going back to living outside and going back in and going back out to the outside. But we kept running into walls when we tried finding stable housing for these individuals. So we had to figure out, we need to find something else that works. We started to see more low barrier supported housing for adults, but for youth, it doesn't, there's not a lot that exists out there, and actually nothing that we're aware of that exists like the Switchback in the province or in Canada actually. So we knew we wanted to pursue something like this with BC Housing. I'm just going to move ahead here. All I have is some pictures here and not a lot of content words in it, but just to give you a picture, I know some of you have seen inside the building and some of you haven't. So this is a picture of one of the 1-bedroom units. When residents move in, it's fully stocked with furniture and utensils and supplies. So if they come in, moving directly from outside, they'll have everything that they need to get by. And most of our residents there currently have a long history of homelessness. We've had some residents move in who've been living outside or precariously housed for the last 5 or 6 years, and they're only 20, 21 years old, which is why that 24/7 support is so important. So they come in, you can see there's appliances. I don't think you can see it in this picture, but there's a washer and dryer combination here. So all the units, the residents living there are responsible for their own cooking and shopping on their own, but we have staff who are available in our staff office to assist them with anything they need at any time. We have a life skills facilitator also who will make individualized service plans or set goals with them upon their intake alongside our case manager. If they've been living outside for a long time, things like budgeting or healthy routine, the real basic things don't come naturally especially if they haven't had safe and stable adults in their life to exemplify that. So this is just in one of our hallways here. You can kind of see some of the community stuff that happens weekly in the building. We try to encourage community and getting together and relationships. So on weekends, we always do a community breakfast in our staff office. We do check-ins every week, which are mandatory for the residents. It is low barrier, but for youth, we do have some expectations, which is, hey, you need to check in with us for a quick 15-minute meeting. What's your week like? What are some challenges? What are your goals for this week? So there isn't a lot expected from the residents, but we do want them hold them accountable to the goals that they've identified for themselves living there. So it help with rides to the grocery store. So we started scheduling some of this stuff so we wouldn't be having to drop everything we're doing just to give one person a ride. Yeah, and so things like movie nights, we try to encourage community and relationships between staff and the residents also. So within the building, there's a number of residents who are using substances, and so it's not part of our expectations that they stop using substances. What we do have, though, during our intake conversations is we want to have open and honest conversations. So we tell them, hey, you're not going to be discharged from this program. You're not going to lose your housing if you're using substances, even if it's in your unit. but we do want to have conversations with you around your safety. So are you comfortable with letting us know if you're going to use? Are you comfortable with inviting a neighbor into your unit? We have a buzzer intercom system between our office and all the units. So there are times when residents will call down and say, hey, can you check on me in 10 or 15 minutes? Because what we don't want to have happen is residents feel like they have to sneak substances into their unit and hide it from us and use in isolation and in secret from us, because we know that's unsafe. However, if their substance use turns into a safety risk or behaviors that affect other residents, we're not going to be okay with that. So a number of residents have identified that they do have specific goals around their substance use, and for some of them it's not to stop using, but they want it to affect their relationships less, or they want to be able to make still be able to, maybe they want to find work while using substances still, or they still want to maintain relationships with their family members while using substances. So we just invite really open and honest conversations around their substance use, which can take a long time. I mean, it's hard to open up about that type of stuff with new people and new supports in your life. So we have harm reduction supplies on site, which opens up conversations around substance use. It also gives us a reminder to maybe check on that person if they're coming down for harm reduction supplies, to check on them in 10-15 minutes to see how they're doing and things like that. The residents do pay rent. It's only $375 a month, which matches the shelter portion through income assistance, which a number of our residents are on income assistance. Some are on youth agreements through MCFD, and some are paying rent through work also. They need to be able to prove that they will be able to afford that small rental fee per month. So our application process, this is just a picture of our staff office the other day. So we leave our door open. The residents know they can come in whenever they want. If in the middle of the night they're having trouble sleeping, or they just want to chat or be around people, they can come in and sit in our office with staff. This is what it looks like in our staff office. So we have a couple of couches, and they can just watch TV or watch a movie or play video games with staff. One of the nice things about our staff office being a unit is that they look exactly the same as the residents. So if we're doing cooking lessons with the residents and we're using certain appliances or utensils, they can go back to their unit, and everything that we used in our office, which has a kitchen also, they can replicate it exactly alike in their unit too. So engaging with that life skills piece is definitely a prerequisite for residents coming into the building. What else can I tell you? This is a small room. I guess we have you saw in the previous picture, kind of just the living area of our staff office. We also have a desk space office, which is which is a bedroom essentially that we put desks in. But in the second bedroom, we have a counseling room or a private meeting space. So we have social workers who will sometimes meet with clients in here, or drug and alcohol counselors. We also have a trauma counselor who comes in once a week and meets with clients. So this is just a welcoming, inviting space for private conversations or meetings that we can offer for residents also. So yeah, it's been operating since we opened it up in December. Of 2020 last year. So it's just been under a year since we've been operating. We kind of got the final go ahead, and it was all finalized that this was going to be happening last June. And so within those 5 months, we were able to outfit the whole building and create the staffing model and hiring the staff between June and last December. And so it's been a crazy fast year since we've opened, and we've been adjusting and adapting daily to the different needs and the model, and we've been trying to glean from other programs like it. But what we're learning is there's not a lot of programs that are like it for youth specifically. So we Yeah, that's what we've been up to this past year with this program, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Esther, I see your hand up.
This might seem like a really silly question, but do you consider marijuana to be substance? Talk about substance use and abuse.
In what sense?
When you talk about allowing them to continue to use substances while they are living there, are they allowed to use marijuana and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so it's kind of, we have this tension. So yes, they can. The funny thing is, so about the units are non-smoking, we call them. So they would be, if they're using marijuana in their units, we'd encourage them to go outside to use it. And same with cigarettes, but some of those harder substances that have a larger control over people's lives that are a lot more dangerous, we would overlook them using that in their unit also, just because we don't want them to have to hide those harder substances from us, and for that safety reason.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Yep, definitely. Thanks.
Trevor.
Yes.
Corporal Rendell here. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm trying to
Great
see.
job. Yeah, great job with the switchback there.
Okay.
Just a couple of questions. Is there a time limit on how long any of these youth can be there?
So it is temporary supportive housing, and it's a program agreement, not a residential tenancy agreement. And so it has to be temporary, and kind of in our mind, we have the 2-year time frame in mind with always the ability to extend it. So if residents and we feel it's their benefit to stay for a bit longer after that, like up to a year, we could do that also.
Okay, so that was in part my next question is the numbers as far as being able to transition the youth back integrate them back into society. Working or something that's still being worked on?
Yeah, so there haven't been a lot of transitions out yet. Well, there has been a few, but some of them have been less planned than others. There's not a lot of expectations in regards to what's mandatory for residents, but they do need to be engaging with the goals that they've outlined for themselves. And there's just some behaviors we won't tolerate, which is the benefit of having a program agreement, is that we can end the program if they're not going to be following through with what they agreed to when they upon entry.
Yeah, right on. I like it. No, the Cyrus Center itself, not just the switchback, you've got beds there for emergency weather.
Yes, yeah, temporary emergency shelter beds.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I just have a quick question. Is there availability for 2 people to stay in a single room, and would the needs of both those people need to meet the criteria?
Yeah, so we would put everyone through the same intake process. Even if it was 2 people living in one unit, even a 1-bedroom unit, they would both have to meet the criteria of the program.
Okay, so if boyfriend met the criteria of the program and girlfriend did not, that wouldn't.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
I just see a question from the chat box on how youth apply for Switchback. How do people get in?
Yeah, so we have an application process, and we have a link that we can send out to individuals looking for it, and it's fillable online, which goes directly to our case manager. So that's the first step, is filling out the application, which we can print out or people can fill out online. And then the second step would, once that seems to meet the criteria, we do actually do an interview process with the individual to learn more about them. I can send that to you, Heather, if you'd like.
Thank you.
Jennifer?
I wanted to ask Trevor, you said earlier that there aren't many similar types of programs or like this for youth. And I imagine you were speaking specifically about the new facility. Are there no other, like what makes it unique? The fact that it's a shelter for youth or supportive housing for youth, or what aspect of it makes it unique?
The low barrier piece. So there are young people like under 19 using substances in that building. So we're trying to reduce the barriers. There is supportive housing for youth, and there's low barrier supportive housing for adults. But that low barrier piece for youth makes it very unique.
As in the only? Is it the only one in BC? Low barrier supportive housing in BC for youth?
I don't want to risk offending any other organization that's doing it, but I'm not aware of any. People can correct me.
Well, I will say one of the only. One of the only. That way you're safe if there's another.
Sure.
I saw your hand up, Liliana.
Yes, I was gonna ask Trevor, is there any residency requirements for like the youth to live certain time in the Chilliwack community or anything like that?
Say the beginning part again.
Is there like residency requirements, like the youth has needed to
I
leave
see.
like 6 months in Chilliwack or anything like that?
No, like all things equal, we would prioritize a Chilliwack resident. But no, it's if there's a need and the youth would benefit from the program and take advantage of the support, yeah, we would definitely look at that application.
So youth that has been jumping around from one community to another and whatnot would qualify?
Yes.
Right.
It's pretty extraordinary, Trevor. Thank you so much for coming out today. It's really, really amazing to hear this presentation, and thank you for all the good work that you do. We'll move on to the next presentation. Karen Stanton, City of Chilliwack, the Reaching Homeless Prevention Program. Would you like to share your screen? All right. Sorry, it's muted there. Can you see the screen now? Not yet. No? Okay, let me try this again here. There we go. There we go. Yep. Thank you for bearing with me. Trevor, you are a hard act to follow. But today, first of all, my name is Karen Stanton. I manage long-range planning for the City of Chilliwack. I recently added a portfolio to my title, which includes community safety. Been working in the area of homelessness policy and supports for probably, well, at least 12 years. And I have today in the room with me, Holly Ferris is our social development coordinator, and she helps in the implementation of the city's homelessness action plan and the Chilliwack Reaching Home program. And this is a really great program. In March 2020, the city became a designated community under the federal government's Reaching Home program. And Reaching Home is a federal funding program that supports local efforts to prevent and reduce homelessness as part of Canada's homelessness strategy. It's a community-based program, meaning that communities make decisions about how funds are spent locally based on local priorities. And
Where we are today is due to a concerted collaborative effort amongst many people in this room as part of the CHC Housing First Task Team and the city to secure long-term funding to address homelessness in Chilliwack. And where we started in 2016 with the Homelessness Action Plan, we were looking to expand funding to Chilliwack. At that time, Chilliwack did not qualify under the program. We were not designated as a community within the program, and we were too big of a community to qualify for their rural and remote homelessness stream. So there was significant advocacy. In 2017, we did see expansion of that rural program to include Chilliwack, and there were a number of organizations that were able to access funding for one-year projects. We kept on going with our advocacy, and we're really happy to see the announcement by the federal government in 2018 that they would look to expand the program to include 4 to 6 communities across Canada. So we knew that the competition was going to be very tight, and but we kept on moving, and thanks to the support of many people in this room, we were able to achieve that designated community status and signed our first agreement with the federal government in 2020 for 4 years. The total value of that funding is 1.7 million over the 4 years. And thankfully, since then, we've been able to access additional funding as a result of having that status. So under the Reaching Home program, the city is considered a community entity, and we hold the agreement with Service Canada to implement the program in Chilliwack and all of its components and requirements as stipulated by the government. The city has appointed a community advisory board that provides recommendations to council on how to implement the program. The board, in consultation with community stakeholders, provides input into a community plan that sets out the priorities for investment in the community. The proposals for local projects, we issue a proposal call, and we evaluate proposal applications on an annual basis. We also are responsible for making decisions. City Council makes decisions on the allocation of funding on the recommendation of the Community Advisory Board. Then we are monitoring projects over time. There's extensive reporting that's required, of course. And then we have a community plan that we continue to update over time. There are a number of other elements to the program, which I'll be going over here. And then Service Canada meets with us regularly to make sure that we are meeting all of the requirements of the program and provide support in that regard. So the key components of the program include an outcome-based approach. And that means that we have to measure our success against established objectives. Then we have a requirement that we need to implement a coordinated access system. We have a timeline for this, which is March 2023, and we are currently working to develop a system that will work for Chilliwack with local service providers. The coordinated access system provides a system for housing and supports to prioritize people who are most in need of assistance and match them to appropriate housing and services. And this helps to ensure fairness and streamline access to housing and services. It is a requirement that all funded programs eventually become part of the coordinated access system and utilize the HIFIS system, which is software to collect data to increase our understanding of homelessness in Chilliwack and how best to address it over time. The Reaching Home directives also encourage collaboration with Indigenous partners to devise local strategies that best meet the needs of Indigenous peoples experiencing homelessness. And this is particular concern to us in Chilliwack, given the high percentage of people who are Indigenous and experiencing homelessness. We do have members who are on the Community Advisory Board that represent Indigenous organizations, and we also seek input through our community planning process on an annual basis to get that perspective. In terms of outcomes, these are the outcomes that are prescribed to us by the Reaching Home program and some of the tools that we use to collect data. So that includes the HIFIS system, a point-in-time count, and we will be required to do another point-in-time count in 2023. And then the HIFIS system, which is for data collection and case management, and allows multiple service providers in the same community to access
real-time data and to increase coordination of services. HIFIS supports daily operations, data collection, and the development of a national portrait on homelessness. So this information is all fed back through Service Canada to inform their greater housing strategy. On coordinated access, this is, as I said, a requirement of the program. And this is for prioritizing people who are most in need of assistance and matching them to appropriate housing and services. And there are a number of features with respect to coordinated access. It includes a centralized database that collects and displays real-time data on housing and supports, provides clear access points of entry, provides for a common assessment process, standardized protocols, and resources focused on ensuring that people connect with appropriate housing and housing supports in an efficient manner. Our community plan, which directs our decision-making over the year in terms of how we allocate funding, is basically outlines investment priorities with respect to these eligible activities. These are activities that are within the Reaching Home program that we are able to apply funds for. Housing services are to help an individual or family transition into safe, stable housing. So this generally includes, but is not limited to, assistance finding housing, funding to secure housing, and funding and support to furnish housing. And this can include, but is not limited to, measures to ensure physical distance or isolation, such as placing and paying for individuals to live in temporary, transitional, or permanent housing accommodations. Prevention and shelter diversion is about activities aimed at preventing homelessness by supporting individuals and families that are at imminent risk of homelessness before a crisis occurs. And this is generally for the support of discharge planning for public systems and institutions, landlord interventions, and emergency rental assistance. It can also include short-term financial assistance for rental arrears, landlord-tenant mediation, addressing unpaid rent, delivery of non-housing financial support such as groceries, personal hygiene products, and to offset housing costs and provide assistance for individuals who are exiting institutions to secure housing so that they do not need to access shelters. We have provision in the last year because of COVID for health and medical services, so we can allocate monies towards the purchase of personal hygiene products and personal protective equipment for staff and vulnerable individuals. Client supports are to improve integration and connectedness to support structures such as treatment centers. It can also include, but not be limited to, procuring emergency shelter beds and barriers to separate beds, and to increase frequency or nature of cleaning of shelters and related facilities. Capital investments are a small part of the program, partly because the value of the program is really not sufficient to build new housing projects. However, it does allow for repairs and upgrades to existing shelters and supportive housing. And we have seen some projects in this area. And then lastly, we can allocate money towards the coordination of resources and data collection. That includes our point-in-time count, as well as supporting the implementation of the coordinated access system and HIFIS. This is the funding agreement. As I mentioned, we have an agreement for $1.7 million over 4 years, and this is how it breaks down. There is a 13% portion of that we retain for administering the program, for doing all of the reporting and implementing the program here. We have money set aside especially for the implementation of the coordinated access. And then we have monies each year that are for sub-projects. So those go to programs that we fund through Reaching Home. Again, the process that we follow is a call for proposal process, where we issue a call out where we identify what priorities we're looking to achieve in this year. And then we invite organizations to submit applications. We do anticipate that this will be occurring in January. We'll be releasing a call for proposals for funding for projects that will begin April 1st. And we use a standard process for evaluating proposals, which include looking at the number of clients and who's going to be served by the project. And we look at the potential of the program to effectively impact our outcomes. So looking to reduce and prevent homelessness in Chilliwack, and so the extent to which the projects will be able to help us achieve those outcomes. We also look at whether proposals include partners and other funders, which is what we encourage. We look for value for money, sustainability, and again, cultural appropriateness, keeping in mind the needs of different groups of people within our housing and shelter systems. We've been very lucky in the last year that we've been able to leverage our community, our designated community status, where we've had additional monies come to us through the federal government for the COVID-19 economic response. We also have received monies through the Canadian Medical Health Association and Luma Native Housing Society to address some local Indigenous housing needs. And some of the projects that we've funded to date include projects that address food security and basic needs here in Chilliwack, to acquire vehicles that support outreach and client transportation for agencies that are serving people that are experiencing homelessness in Chilliwack, rent subsidies to address certain groups of people that are in need of subsidies to maintain housing in the market. We have also contributed projects to projects that have set up homes, group homes that support teen mothers, women, and that have also provided move-in kits to people transitioning from shelter to housing. There have been projects that have been used to upgrade existing facilities and to support the Shiam First Nation emergency shelter as they work through the process of securing longer-term funding with BC Housing. We've also supported some smaller projects around data collection. The Indigenous Welcome Center service analysis, it had a different name when it started, but it was about looking at the services needed to address the needs of people who are Indigenous in our community, in particular those that are most vulnerable in our community. We've also funded in our most recent call out increased outreach, and this came as a result of ongoing discussions that we've had with stakeholders in the community around community safety and the need for more people to be out in the community performing outreach roles. So looking forward to the next year, we will be reviewing again our community plan and making sure that we've got our priorities right in terms of how we allocate funds with respect to those different categories that Reaching Home has set out for us. We will be looking at community advisory board membership. We're still looking to fill a few positions. It's a very large board. It represents various interests in the community, and we are looking to strengthen the community by the community advisory board by adding people with lived experience, people from the LGBTQ2S+ community, as well as Indigenous representation. We'll be looking to issue our call for proposals in the new year, and more information will be distributed through the Chilliwack Healthier Community newsletter. We also will be continuing to work on coordinated access with our stakeholders and different levels of government. And a new piece is we are working with a number of agencies now to look at how we can advocate to increase federal funding to address the needs of Indigenous people that are off reserve, to people that are experiencing or at risk of homelessness. So we do feel that we have an opportunity here to potentially access some additional funding, and we look forward to working with our partners to see that come about. And that's my presentation.
That's great, Karen. Thank you so much. We are running a little behind. If anyone has a real urgent question, please speak up now. And if you do not, I think we will slide in again. All this information, or as much as possible, will be on our website, and there's always an opportunity to follow up if you want to dig in and get more details afterwards. So let's just move right on to the Chilliwack Housing Hub. And Graham, if you'd like to share screen.
Sorry, that didn't work for some reason. Okay, so are you able to see just the slide? Okay, wonderful. So I'm Graham McMahon. I have the privilege of being the supervisor for the Chilliwack Housing Hub. Chilliwack Housing Hub is a housing first approach to addressing homelessness in Chilliwack. I'm going to just kind of run through some brief history and a little bit of details about how our program works and kind of where we're at as a program. So the Housing Hub actually kind of had its origins out of a project in 2017 where I was hired to be a housing development coordinator. It was kind of overseen by the Housing First Task Team. The desire was to do some research into the housing crisis and the homelessness crisis that was going on in Chilliwack at the time, and kind of do an assets-based evaluation of where things were at in the community in terms of what we have for resources and what we don't have. Very early on, it became very apparent that we did not have housing first programs in Chilliwack. So within about 3 months of that project, I began putting together a model for a housing first program. And by the end of that, in market funding for 2 staff and a program budget in order to launch a pilot program. So we started in June 2018, and like I said, we had 2 staff, and we had a part-time staff member that was contributed by Stella Service Agency, which we were really grateful for. And after that first year, it went quite well, housed a number of participants in the community. And then after that, we were able to secure funding from the federal government for a year, and the city of Chilliwack committed to 3 years of funding to allow the Housing Hub to expand to 3 staff. And then you will notice that we go from April 2019 to annual 2020-2021. That means we actually got ongoing funding, which was a huge victory for the Housing Hub, a large part because of the work of the city giving us ongoing funding for 3 years, because they became a designated city, and we were really blessed to have them contribute the Reaching Home funding. And then we also had BC Housing come to the table. We were able to expand our program to 5 staff and we were able to also offer ongoing rent subsidies. And in this current fiscal year, we received an increase in Reaching Home funding, again administered by the city, and again very grateful for their partnership with our program, which allowed us to expand to 6 staff. And one of that expansion, adding that extra staff, is a housing operations facilitator, which I'll explain a little bit more in a minute. In terms of being a housing first program, this is basically these are the 5 principles of what housing first is. And so the first principle of housing first is housing. The idea is that we try to offer as quick access to housing as possible with limited readiness conditions. And what basically that means is that a person doesn't necessarily have to be on medication or have their mental health diagnosed and have all supports in place, or have or be clean and sober before they move into housing. The idea is that we house folks first, and then begin to work on those things after they are housed, so that they have a stable, safe platform off of which to work on their physical health, their mental health, working on their substance use if that's something that they want to work on. Choice is a big part of housing first principles. I don't like the word consumer choice, so participant choice is how we would we would say it. And what that means is that they choose what kind of home they want to live in. I mean, obviously within reason, somebody wants to live in a mansion, we're not going to be able to help them with that. But they want to live on the north side of town or the south side of town, or they want to live in a bachelor unit or a basement suite, or we can help them. There's services they want to be close to. Then when it comes to helping them find housing, we work within kind of what it is that they want and that works for them in their lives and their goals. The recovery is the third principle, which is recovery orientation. And when we hear the word recovery, I think of substance use recovery, which, yes, that includes that, but it's much more about a holistic recovery. So a person who's been chronically homeless for a long period of time may have physical health needs, they may have mental health needs, they will have experienced trauma while they've been homeless, they may have experienced trauma as a child, they may have lost connections to family or to healthy peer networks. And so recovery is about all of that. And so it's not just a roof over somebody's head. That is not housing first. Housing first is, yes, providing a roof, a safe place for a person to live, but then is also providing them supports so that they can recover in a holistic way throughout for their whole lives, which leads to the fourth principle, which is support. And this is individualized and person-driven support. Our participants set their own goals, and then they tell us what goals they want to work on and in what order. And so then we work with them as a program in helping them work on those goals. And finally, community. So the whole idea of the Housing Hub and as Housing First is for a participant not to be completely dependent upon the program. The idea is that they access services in the community, that they have social and community integration, and so that they will be able to have a healthy peer network and healthy support service network out in the community, so that they're able to live independentent after they graduate from our program. This is a bit of a model in terms of how our program works. I'll kind of move around the little arrow here. So person starts in need of housing. They're referred to our program either through a self-referral or through an agency referring them to us. We have an online link, which I'll put in the chat box for people if they would like that. So they're referred to our program. We don't have a traditional waiting list, in terms of a person applied in August and therefore they're ahead of somebody who applies in September. It's very hard to do that when you work in market rental housing. So the Housing Hub works in market rental housing. Those are all of our units. The Housing Hub and PCRS overseeing the Housing Hub. The Housing Hub does not own any buildings. We don't, everything that we have in terms of inventory, in terms of supporting our participants and accessing housing is all built through partnerships with landlords, building managers, owners, building operators like MQHS and Ruth and Naomi's. And so we work with our partners at securing market rental units. Because of that, a property manager might come to us and say, hey, I have a 2-bedroom unit. Well, the next person on the list might be a single person, and we can't overhouse somebody, and most likely they couldn't afford a 2-bedroom unit anyways. And then so we go to our referral list and look at who might qualify for that 2-bedroom list or so that 2-bedroom unit, and who that 2-bedroom unit would be a good fit for. So where it's located, is it a walk-up? Does somebody have mobility issues that would prevent them from being able to rent in a walk-up? And so it's not a traditional wait list in that there is a particular order in how we house people. It's about finding the right housing for the right person and bringing those two things together. So once we in terms of our staff model, in terms of our program, so I'm the Housing Hub supervisor. So my role is kind of more administrative, big picture thinking, planning. And we were, like I mentioned, we were able to just hire a housing operations facilitator. So I'll get more into the details in a little bit, but we currently are operating 47 units within the city of Chilliwack. And again, these are scattered sites. So we have these apartment units or basement suites or duplexes or detached houses spread all over Chilliwack. Every single one of those has a different residential tenancy agreement. It has a different maintenance process. It has different policies around smoking and pets and all these kinds of things. And so the operations to keep the Housing Hub going are quite immense. And so we were able, fortunately, to hire one of our own existing staff, Alicia Wilburn, to be our housing operations facilitator. Her color is green and mostly green and some blue because she's also carries a caseload, a small caseload of participants as well. And then kind of the bedrock of our program are our housing support facilitators. And so each housing support facilitator carries a caseload of 15 participants, and their jobs are to do weekly home visits with each one of our participants. So they meet our participants in their homes, they work on their goals, they work on working through any issues or challenges that they have, they help them develop life skills, and very importantly, they connect them to wraparound community supports in the community. And so once we house a person, wrong direction there. Once we house a person, or there are two streams of housing in terms of our program. There's independent housing, and that's where a participant's name goes on a residential tenancy agreement, like any of us would sign if we were to rent a unit with the landlord. They access a market rental unit that's a good fit for them, and then they find this place that they get to call home. And then we connect wraparound community supports to them so that they have everything that they need in the community. And then we have several other kind of different kinds of programs, but that are based on the same model. So we have a program called the Graduated Housing Program. We have congregate housing, and we have little slight variations of those. It's unique in that instead of the participant's name going on the tenancy agreement, PCRS as an agency actually signs the RTA. So the actual tenant, the legal tenant of the unit is PCRS. And this is usually for a limited period of time, so 6 months, 1 year. And when it comes to kind of independent units where a participant is living on their own, or maybe it's a family living on their own in a unit, it's what we call our graduated housing program. So the first year, PCRS's name is on the tenancy agreement. We guarantee rent to the landlord. We guarantee security deposit to the landlord. We guarantee that if there's any damage is done in the unit, that we will be responsible for repairing them and making sure that the unit gets put back to the way that it should be. After that year is up, and so this is sort of a transitional housing model. After that year is up, if a participant is paying rent on time, being a good neighbor, and taking care of their unit, then they graduate to having their name on the tenancy agreement. And so it starts with PCRS. We have a guarantee with our landlord. We absorb most of the risk, so that's why they give us these units. And then after a year, the landlord knows what kind of tenant they have. They've had very little complaints, or they had some complaints in the beginning, and we dealt with those. We helped the participant stabilize, build the life skills they need to be a successful tenant. And by the end of that year, they've proven themselves, and then their name goes on the tenancy agreement, and then it becomes permanent housing. Then it becomes like this independent housing. Their name's on the tenancy agreement with the landlord. It's a regular market unit, and it is permanently their home. And it's like any other tenancy agreement that any of us would sign. And so that's kind of basically how our program works. In terms of where we're at, I mentioned that we currently have 47 units in the community, and that's growing. We'll be signing for a couple more units in the next few weeks here. We have 12 independent units where our participants' names are on the tenancy agreement with the landlords. And in those independent units, we currently have 18 residents. We have 2 congregate units where we have 7 units living that. Congregate units are units where the common space, like living rooms, kitchen, dining area, is shared by the participants in the home, but they each have their own locking bedroom door. We as staff are able to enter those congregate units at any time in the common space, but we can't enter their bedrooms because their bedrooms are their private residences, and we have to give proper notice in order to enter those units. But the common space, we kind of keep an eye on, make sure things are being kept clean, that it's safe for everybody that lives there, in case one roommate might be not doing their part in terms of keeping it clean and hygienic. And so that's why we can enter those units, and because we want to meet with those people on a weekly basis. And so we do that often, meeting in the living room or kitchen with the participants that live there. And then, as you can see, the vast majority of our units are 25 graduated units. So we, I think, have had a total of 28. 3 of our participants have graduated to independent agreements now, where their names are on the tenancy agreement. In those, we have 34 residents currently. And then we have something I call 8 transitional units. These are very new units from us. We had a developer purchase a building, and the building had commercial space below and 8 one-bedroom units up above, and they happened to all be vacant. And so what they did is they rented all 8 units to us as PCRS, and then we're housing participants there on sort of a transitional housing program. In terms of our breakdown, we have 20, so total, I think right now we have 54 adults and 13 attached children. And so of those 54 adults, we have 23 males, we have 29 females, and we have 2 that identify as transgender or gender diverse. In terms of our number of folks that are chronically homeless, we have 34 of our 54 adults were identified as chronically homeless when we housed them. So that means they were homeless for at least 6 months or more. Many of our folks were homeless for at least a year or more when we housed them. 8 we would classify as recently or episodically homeless. So they become homeless within the past 6 months when they were referred to our program. We had 7 part of our program who were imminently at risk of homelessness, meaning that they've been given an eviction notice for whatever reason. Usually it had to do with a unit being sold or a unit being renovated, and they had nowhere to go, could not find anywhere to house it. So to prevent them from falling into homelessness or having to go to a shelter, so that shelter diversion aspect that Karen was talking about, we house those folks who are imminently at risk of homeless. And then we have folks who are at risk of homelessness, so they're not quite right on the edge, but they're somehow inadequately housed and they're at risk of homelessness. So we've housed 5 of those. 5 of our participants fall into that category. And then in terms of our Indigenous to non-Indigenous ratio, 33% of our participants in our program are Indigenous. Our goal is, as a program, is to try and stay as close to the ratio or percentage of those who are in our community who are homeless who are Indigenous. So the last homeless count in 2021, I believe, indicated that 34% of our homeless population is Indigenous. So we are at 34% or 33% right now of our participants, and we are going to be increasing that in the coming days as well. And that's, I mean, for us, it's a part of our commitment to be a part of reconciliation. This is Stalo territory. We are so grateful for all of the Stalo partners, the chiefs that we've worked with as a program, the Stalo agency and other Indigenous agencies we've worked with, that our priority is as much as possible to house Indigenous people when we have the ability to do that. Just a couple final numbers, our historical profile. So looking back over the last 3.5 years, we've housed 97 participants, which includes children. 75 of those are adults, 22 are children. During the time of the last 3 years, we've had 2 deaths in our program, 2 participants who passed away. Both were related to cardiac events. And of those 97 participants that we've housed, we have, and this is to the best of our knowledge, we try and keep tabs on where our participants are when they leave our program. At this time, we believe that 2 of our former participants who are no longer part of our program are not currently housed. And we have 1 participant that we are not sure. We think they are housed because they are working, I think, full time, but we haven't been able to confirm their housing. In terms of our referral list, you can see that we have a long and large referral list. We have 84 people awaiting housing, and that doesn't include children. That's just adults. Some of them might be couples or individuals. 47 to 84 are Indigenous. So again, 56% of those on our waiting list are Indigenous, which is way overrepresentation of what it should be in Chilliwack, considering about 9% of our total population in Chilliwack is Indigenous. At this time, we're not able to give any timeline on when we're able to house participants due to supply challenges. We can find units out there. The question is whether or not they're affordable enough for our participants. Our limitations are staffing. So once we fill up those caseloads, we can't really house any more people until we graduate people from our program completely. And also our rent subsidy limits. One of our BC Housing helps us out with rent subs in terms of helping lower the cost of housing for our participants. But we have a limited number of those. So once we run out of those rent subs, we can't use any more. We can't reduce the rent for any more participants. In terms of our kind of historical numbers, you can see that 53 of our 75 adults were chronically homeless, and then you can kind of see the rest of the numbers. And in terms of our historical numbers of those 97 participants, 44% were Indigenous and 56% were non-Indigenous. I believe that's the end of my information. I would love to answer any questions if anybody has any.
As always, just the most amazing program. Thank you for your presentation. I see Leslie's got 2 hands up, so that's most urgent to me.
Thumbs up, not 8 fingers. Yeah, okay. I just wanted to share that I've worked with Graham and Housing Hub, his staff. I just can't say enough good things about the work they do. And, you know, some of the clients that were on the verge of homelessness, I've referred, you know, super challenging situations, and I just see them go to the mat with doing their best for the clients. And I'm just so grateful that the program has been funded and continues to be funded, and that our Alicia is still with you, and you just make an amazing team. And I just hold my hands up to you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Leslie. Appreciate it. And I mean, Leslie, you've been a great partner as a Stall Service Agency. And I mean, we have over 30 partnerships in the community. It's about all of us working together, and that's the strength of our city. And I felt it's the strength of our program. It's our partnership. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Oh, Cody, one quick question.
One quick question. What would you need to expand? What is your main piece that you're missing? Is it funding? Is it more landlords and units?
Great question. So yeah, funding is a big part of it. We have 12 building operators we currently work with, or landlords. Some of them are property managers. They have a lot of portfolio, or they usually have a fairly large portfolio that we can take advantage of, but it usually has to do with whether we have enough staffing, and then especially rent subsidies. I mean, what we're really facing right now is we used to be able to find, you know, 3-bedroom units in the $1,500 range. And what we're finding now is our 2 bedrooms we can find between $1,300 and $1,500. And then there's a jump from 2 to 3-bedroom units that basically a 3-bedroom starts at $2,100. And so our rent subsidies just can't, like $450 a month barely puts a dent in that for a single parent family. So that's where, you know, we need more flexible rent subsidies. We need a more affordable housing in Chilliwack, which is also part of what I do, is work with, you know, on committees with folks that are talking about how we bring more affordable housing to Chilliwack, not even supported, like just affordable for people who are working poor or people who can't afford $2,100 for a 3-bedroom unit. So yeah, it's multifaceted, but funding is a big piece for both staffing and rent subsidies. And you know, I'm always open to work with new landlords. So
thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Let's move on to the last presentation of the day. Jody and Krista, exciting new program. Go ahead and screen share.
Last but not least, I knew if you put us after Graham too, we'd have little time left. Jab. And Krista's gonna start us off.
Yeah, so just to start, in the spring of 2020, the Chilliwack RCMP began the community response team. And so the aim of this team is to increase police presence and provide proactive outreach to some of our city's most vulnerable people. It's definitely key to part of our homeless strategy, and basically to connect with the most vulnerable portion of our community. So we conduct daily foot patrols at 7:15 and 1 o'clock, and you'd probably see, if you're downtown and around that time, generally it started with, the RCMP partnering with the City Bylaw Department and Griffin Security. And basically the foot patrols are aimed at first first objective is preventing entrenchment. And the second part, and they're not in any order, is just connecting with the vulnerable population and providing that outreach. And ultimately, it became very clear that there was no real-time access for people for services. We were talking to people, and I'll give you some anecdotal stories. For example, one individual dealt with her on a daily basis, and one morning was a rainy morning, Friday morning, and I had never seen her so bad. She was begging for help, and I was on the phone trying to get a hold of people, and no one was available for real-time street access outreach work. Essentially, we were getting messages from a variety of partners that it's like, oh, you just need her to tell her to go meet with so-and-so. Their office is located here and the office hours are from here to here. And we found that this population has a very difficult time navigating the system sometimes. And so instead of sending them to the help, we needed to find a way to send the help to them. So really excited about the program. It's allowing people to navigate the system by bringing outreach work to the street in real time. So now when we're out and about connecting with the city's vulnerable population and they're asking for help, we have a way of getting that help to them. So super excited. And I know Jody's gonna go into a lot of great detail about the program and the success. Like I was talking to Brad, he had to leave for a moment, but in the 5 years that he's been doing foot patrols downtown, the last 2 months is the first time we've really felt that we can make a difference in terms of accessing real-time support to our homeless population. So really exciting, and I'll turn it over to Jody in the interest of time.
Thank you, Krista. Oh, I hate technology sometimes. Okay, so as Krista mentioned, the Community Integration and Coordination Program is what this is called. And it is a one-year pilot project. We were lucky enough to kind of start talks with Krista, with Fraser Health, and I actually did some work with Red Deer, Alberta as well, who were running a bit of a pilot. And then I spoke to the city, and we were able to get one-year pilot or one-year project funding through the city of Chilliwack for something that they had applied for on a larger scale. And so what it is a rapid and integrative response for individuals with elevated risks, often directly relating to substance use, mental health, and homelessness. And again, I'll just mention, because we're going to be pushing for funding for this for the next 10 months, this is a one-year pilot project that started in late August or September. I'm hoping this is gonna, oh, it did. Okay, so Krista kind of mentioned this quickly. Some of the things that came up for me when I was doing a bit of the research into this was that need for compassionate, rapid street level response, sort of diverting the services currently from the RCMP bylaw or Griffin. I found like there's a lot of outreach staff out on the streets of Chilliwack, but there was no one specific sort of case management, and hats off to ICM, but they are limited. There is eligibility requirements for ICM, so it just wasn't covering everything that was needed out there. Need for available transportation came up consistently, especially through COVID. It was really noted. But being able to put somebody in your vehicle and get them off to the shelter or to the doctor to treatment or detox or their other appointments. The CERT table I'll talk a little bit more about in a minute. But we had paused the CERT table, the situation table, and I will explain that in a minute, through COVID, but also because we found it wasn't working the way that we wanted the situation table to work. Situation table, everything's off the side of everybody's desk. There was no, there's no staff part-time or full-time that is attached to the situation table. And we're also busy, over busy even. So that need for effective coordination and follow through for the situation table was identified as a piece of this. And then of course, the need for integrating Chilliwack services and resources to work together. And I've never seen a community that does that as well as Chilliwack. So that's not to knock what was already happening. But again, pulling those silos together and really being able to work together. So what do? And you can see some pictures that my outreach staff have been giving me the last few weeks here. We did get consents from everybody who exists in these photos. So the Community Integration and Coordination Program provides support during the foot patrols with the RCMP bylaw and Griffin. You can see Brad posing in this picture here. They have supportive conversations and on-site sort of needs assessments with the folks that they're coming across. We were lucky enough to be able to have a vehicle attached to the program. So we bought a new van with easy cleaning on the inside of the vehicle. And we can provide safe transportation then to your health appointments, to the detox, to treatments, to shelter, to your court appointments, whatever appointments you might be working on. We can provide some basic needs, harm reduction supplies, so clothing and food, things like that that they might need in the moment. So then case management of complex individuals to coordinate services that are already in place and provide referral and advocacy for new supports and resources. So here is that piece where the outreach staff, not having someone case manage and actually follow through. You know, there's lots of good communication amongst our outreach staff in Chilliwack around, yep, I saw that person today, yep, they were safe. I'm able to get them some food today. I'm able to get them some harm reduction today. But then beyond those sort of basic needs, there's not a lot of movement in terms of the case management of those particular folks. And then we also wanted to be able to provide a bit of like on-call rapid response to RCMP, bylaw, Griffin, and really ultimately the community at large, to be able to have two staff that were available right now during the hours of 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. on Monday and Friday, to be able to hop in the van and go down and actually compassionately work with and address a situation that you might be having or seeing outside your workplace or in the downtown core. This is the nicest picture of Robbie. Some of you may recognize him, but I just love his face in this picture. So providing a safe, warm handoff to appropriate referred resources. And then getting into a little bit of the CERT table again here. So there's a few hours a week put into that contract for myself to be able to help coordinate and host our weekly situation table. Alongside Melanie Voth from MCFD, who was working with Mike Sikora on this project for the last few years. So Melanie and I will be moving the situation table forward starting November 2nd next week. And then my two staff will also provide the coordination and follow through with those identified folks and the community team that is identified at the CERT table to provide the wraparound support for the individuals. And providing the leadership to guide that intervention and integrating those services for success and accountability. And then, of course, practicing with a culturally competent and trauma-informed approach. So who are the community integration staff? Here, masked and unmasked, you see Christine and Crystal. They have both come to this project with decades of experience at Fraser Health Riverstone, at the Fraser East RAC, at Yothmeath, and Christine's been with PCRS Harm Reduction Outreach for the last 3 years. They are so passionate about what they're doing out there right now. They've both been in roles before where they felt like they couldn't really follow through because they were just one little piece of the continuum of service. So for them to be able to now case manage and actually see people through the process they are just in here glowing every day from the work that they're doing. And on the plus side, they are so connected, not only with the people that are out there on the streets, but with all the resources, services, Fraser Health. They know everybody. So this is kind of some of the photos from the morning foot patrol. So they get together at 7:15 in front of City Hall and head out. And that again is our CMP. There's Steve from Bylaw and the Griffin workers as well. Oh, and Sean, there's our Indigenous peer coordinator, Sean, is also in that picture. He joins them a couple of days a week. So these are just a few of the places. My staff are always sending me pictures of the day, but these are a few of the photos that they've taken while they're working over the last month, and all of the places that they've already been to. They've been super busy. It is all about community and integrating the services that we have here. So thank you for anyone, if you see your name up there already, thank you for your participation. So I won't go too much into detail around the CERT table. Some of you may be already aware, but it is the Chilliwack Interagency Response Team. It came about, I think, in 2018 here in Chilliwack. And it is a multidisciplinary partnership. And there's over 25 local agencies that are at that table, including law enforcement, all the aspects of housing, every aspect of health, MCFD, Youth Meath, income assistance, probation, justice, and all the community social services. This meeting happens every Tuesday at 1 o'clock. So it's every single week. And it generally has been the managers or directors, supervisors, managers, or directors. So it's leadership that are at that table. And that's because there's some privacy and confidentiality pieces that are attached to CERT. But really it's to identify and quickly assist those who are at elevated or imminent risk of harm, victimization, or criminality in our community. And that's not to take away from longer term planning or long-term case management. It really is a rapid intervention to identifying those folks and to create a real quick community resource team that provides that rapid intervention. And that usually happens or should be happening within sort of 48 hours of that Tuesday meeting. So as I said before, one of the issues was that there really wasn't anyone full-time that is attached to that model. So I really think that having Christine and Crystal on board and as part of the CERT will now be able to sort of facilitate moving that resource team that gets created forward in a quicker way, finding out who's already attached and what we can do in the next day and a half to intervene. So really the CERT team is a proactive response to reducing our hospitalizations, arrests, and apprehensions, reducing those 911 calls, essentially reducing the need for enforcement or emergency response, while also reducing harm and risks to our most vulnerable folks and diverting those supports back to the social service agencies in Chilliwack. Lots of work in the last 5 weeks already. So Crystal and Christine have made 437 points of contact with our vulnerable population. 52% of those contacts with folks who identify as Indigenous. And they're already case managing 15 individuals that they've met out there and through their walkabouts. And these are just a number of the referrals that have already happened or transports that they've had, visits and appointments. So mental health, the pain clinic, crisis line, both Creekside and Directions. This picture right here is a young man sitting outside of Directions in Vancouver after ringing the doorbell. They were able to put him in the van and get him right down there and set that up in about 2 hours one day. That assessments, clothing and shoes, harm reduction, health unit, revive, interchange, pro-life. 3 folks who have just started with the OAT clinic this week. Which is a big move for all 3 of them who are very deeply entrenched in their substance use. Dropping someone off at Seabird Island for the first time that he's ever gone to treatment before. And I don't think he stayed for more than a couple of days, but I bet you the next time he's gonna be there for longer. So Ruth and Naomi's, the Fraser East RAC, Salvation Army, hospital, advocacy, and housing. And this is our contact here. I will share the PowerPoint with Sabine, so this will go out to all you guys. But if you want to jot things down, please give me a call or an email, and Crystal and Christine's work phone lines are here as well. Don't hesitate to shoot us a text even, or reach out if you want more information or if you need some help. That's it.
What an extraordinary way to end this amazing event.